Good morning, Roman. How you doing?
Good morning, Ali. Great, thanks. And you?
Yeah, good, thanks. So exciting little continuation of our discussion so far. First episode, we went through a little bit of a background about you, your experience so far. Episode 2, we covered, we had a little debate between ourselves about discretionary or manual versus algorithmic trading. And then we left off where we were going to share certain solutions that we employ in our trading practices. And in particular, we wanted to touch upon a project, an open source project that the team had released in 2017 called the DWX ZeroMQ Connector, as to why it exists, what was the background behind it, the vision that powered it, and how we've learned from that experience over time and how it will benefit people with what we've done to it. So Darwinex does not have a native trading API. And we used to get requests back then, albeit from a small number of people, that a trading API would be handy. And to touch on the vision behind it again, just for a moment, a lot of people came in with a very sensible, with some very sensible feedback, which was that, well, why go to all this trouble when you could technically just release a trading API and be done with it? Why have a bridge at all? And that's a very valid point. Now, due to several reasons, it simply hasn't been on the roadmap at Darwinex to have a native trading API. We have, however, released the Darwin API that allows people to enables people to trade Darwin assets. We now support Trader Workstation, which enables people to use the TWS API and any TWS supported trading platforms or environments such as NinjaTrader, multi-charts, and what have you. But we do not have a native trading API as of yet, because there is simply not enough in the way of demand that's come in for us to for it to warrant deploying developer and hence strategic resources. So there was a segment of the audience who had trading strategies in other programming languages at other brokers, who wanted the opportunity of attracting third-party investor capital or participating in the prop allocation DarwinIA at Darwinex, so as to essentially have their strategies manage third-party investor capital or DarwineX capital and be able to receive performance fees on a high watermark basis on investor profits. However, that wasn't possible for a segment of the audience who did not trade in MQL. So the vision was twofold, essentially, behind releasing this open source project. One was to empower people who did not necessarily have a background in MQL to be able to use any programming language and be able to interface with Darwinex liquidity. So MetaTrader became a non-issue as a result of this project. However, what we did at the time was employ a middleware called ZeroMQ, and the need for it was to essentially act as the bridge between the trading strategy of the user. That could have been in any programming language. We did a demonstration and supplied example code in Python at the time, but Python was not a necessity by any means. It was essentially to demonstrate as easily as possible the functionality of the bridge. But ZeroMQ came with its own challenges. And what we found with feedback over time was that unless people were fairly savvy with debugging socket connectivity issues, particularly with respect to ZeroMQ, it became quite a challenging environment for people to use the ZeroMQ, DWX ZeroMQ connector. For all those people listening to this, we will be sharing a lot of material and demonstrating things on screen. So if you are currently on a podcast platform, then when you have time, if you could watch the equivalent on YouTube, that will allow you to follow along with what we're doing here. But to return to that API discussion, we ended up releasing the DWX ZeroMQ connector as the best of both worlds. It in itself served as an API written in MQL, so that anybody who did or didn't have experience in MQL didn't have to do anything. The API itself was written in MQL so that all people would have to do is deploy the code onto their MetaTrader platform, the simplest use case possible for anybody with little or no experience with MetaTrader. And the second thing it helped do was that by virtue of being an API written in MQL, it enabled people to benefit from the MetaTrader platform itself. So in traditional API environments, REST API environments, you'll have functionality that enables you to do data acquisition, order management, as well as position management. And by developing this open source project, what we ended up doing was giving people the ability to do all of that, but also benefiting from having the entire platform itself available to them. So people could use the platform itself at any point in time as one of many things. They could use it as a backup, for instance, to kill off positions that perhaps their code wasn't able to close, or to deal manually to any particular symbol or order related issue if their code did not permit or did not have the functionality to do it. They could also use MetaTrader as a very convenient position management, a visual interface whereby any orders that their code would be sending through and managing inside the platform would be visible to them. So if there was any manual intervention that was necessary on their part, or if they didn't agree with any particular order that had been taken by their code, their algorithmic trading strategy, they had the benefit of using MetaTrader as that visual right there for you to point and click and manage your account while not affecting anything in your trading strategy at all. So we took all that feedback into consideration and sat down to figure out if we could remove this dependency on ZeroMQ and make it completely synchronized between just the trading strategy, which could be written in any programming language. We chose to use Python as an example to illustrate functionality, but it could be C#, it could be Java, C++, what have you, whatever programming language that supports a few things that we'll talk about shortly can interface with Darwinex via MetaTrader without the programmer or strategy developer necessarily needing to know MetaTrader or MQL. And in doing that R&D, we figured out a way to get rid of ZeroMQ altogether, the middleware dependency. So now DWX Connect, as we are releasing it as a secondary open source project very soon, will no longer have this dependency and will communicate directly with MetaTrader via files. This is where, Roman, I'd like you to chime in and carry the conversation, because you've been hard at work implementing this for almost a year now, with all the feedback that you've been handling as well as collecting from the DWX ZeroMQ project and its issues and tickets. So yeah, tell me more about how we've resolved the problem of the ZeroMQ middleware and what we've done essentially.
Yeah, first also to expand on the motivation why to do it. Mm-hmm. There were also a few technical issues or requests that were difficult to implement. For example, so someone wanted to subscribe to basically all the symbols or a very large number of symbols, and that would create a lot of messages and a lot of CPU usage on the ZeroMQ connector. So yeah, this could be done more efficiently through using files where we could store all the symbol information in one file. And then there was also the question of how to implement it in other languages. And this way, in the current implementation, the new package would be much easier to implement in other languages. And we even provide 3 languages already, which are Python, Java, and C#. So you already have a starting point if you use one of these 3 languages.
So how about we continue on that note into functionality that we have improved? ZeroMQ, how we've removed it from the connector, and how exactly this revised connector enables anybody with any trading strategy in any programming language that supports file I/O to communicate directly with MetaTrader without any third party or middleware.
Yeah, the basic idea is that we have a server, EA and MetaTrader, and we can go through the input parameters later, but I just want to demonstrate what it does. Basically, in the files, directory, it will create
just to interrupt you here for one moment, Roman, for the benefit of people who are listening and watching to this, if you are not familiar with MetaTrader, if you could keep that directory open, actually, Roman, so we can navigate through. Just go to the root directory, the MT4 directory.
And basically, how we get there is through files and then open data folder. And then you can see the MQL4 file, or for MetaTrader 5, it would be MQL5.
That's it. So this is the directory structure that is present inside your MetaTrader 4 or MetaTrader 5 instance. When you install MetaTrader 4, this is for the benefit of people who don't have experience with MetaTrader 4 or 5, or have little experience, or haven't really navigated these directories. This is the directory structure inside your installed trading platform instance. And over here, we'll guide you shortly. And also, we've also produced documentation for this on GitHub that will enable you to install whatever we talk about today and release on GitHub quite easily. And with a few easy steps, you'll be able to launch the MetaTrader side of things without having to be an expert by any means. If you have a very basic understanding of how to install new software and you have login credentials and are able to log into MetaTrader, you'll be absolutely fine. So I thought I'd interject with that just for the benefit of those people who are watching who may not necessarily understand what they're looking at. I'm sure most people watching this will already know this directory structure, but now it covers everybody. So carry on. Apologies for the intrusion.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so in the files directory, there's some server EA. EA stands for Expert Advisor, and it's basically an algorithmic a script that does automated functions. And there's a DWX subfolder, and the server EA now stores the information, for example, for open orders in these files. For example, now here in the open order file, you have account information and also the orders as a dictionary. And right now we don't have any orders, so it's empty. And you can also access the account information, for example, free margin or balance, which might be used if you want to have like calculate the lot size dependent on your balance, for example. And these files are in JSON format, so they can be read by any other, any programming language that supports the reading files, basically. And we implemented an API in Python, Java, and C# for that purpose.
So effectively, we have the core API, which is written in MQL, so that it can be deployed inside MetaTrader by anybody who wishes to use the project. And then for demonstration purposes, we've written client-side implementations in Python, C# and Java, if I'm correct there,
yes,
Roman, for people to essentially build on or use as is, depending on their needs. So for this demonstration, we'll be using the Python implementation, but we will also be releasing C# and Java versions of this exact implementation for anybody to carry onwards from there.
Yes, and one basic idea was also to make it as easy as possible to write strategies in Python or for this DWX Connect package. And therefore, the structure is a bit different compared to ZeroMQ. We now have something called a tick processor, which overrides some functions which can be or which are triggered once, for example, there's a new tick, the onTick function will be triggered. Or if there's a new bar, then the onBar data will be triggered. And if there's a new historic data, this function will be triggered. And there's also an onOrder event function, which will always be triggered when order changes. So these can be used to manage your orders, basically, and your the data you receive.
Great. And the functionality is exactly the same as what one would expect trading through MetaTrader or trading through any API, really, for that matter. If I'm not mistaken, we support all order types supported natively by MetaTrader. Could you elaborate on that a little bit so that both past and new people can get an idea of as to their capabilities when using the bridge?
Yeah, you can basically use all order types that are also used in MetaTrader. So you can use stop orders, limit orders, and market orders. They are named a bit differently, but we will publish the the exact name in the instructions. One reason is, for example, that MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5 uses slightly different ways of handling orders and positions. So we had to have one consistent way to do it in Python.
That's probably one of the biggest improvements with DWX Connect, in that it now conveniently supports both MetaTrader 4 and 5, so greatly expands the asset classes that you can trade through the connector. And you don't have to implement anything differently when it comes to MetaTrader 4 or 5. So you could be preferring to use either of the two platforms, and you'll be able to use the same code to interface with Darwinex liquidity. So all you'll need to do is, depending on the account type that you have, whether it's MetaTrader 4 or 5, you'll simply need to use the MetaTrader 4 or 5 equivalent of the API at MetaTrader's end.
Sure. So should we do a few small examples to show how it works?
Yeah, let's start with data. So let's, I believe there are 3 capabilities, right? The connector, as compared to the last one, this connector actually supports 3 types of data acquisition. If I'm not mistaken, they are real-time, historical, and tick data. Could you elaborate on each one by one? Let's just demonstrate each of those functionalities.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the data functionality basically has 4 different types. One, you have the account information, which is just stored as a dictionary of the DWX client. And then you can subscribe to tick data.
What kind of information does account info contain, just so people who are watching this right now can get an idea?
For example, the balance of the account, the equity, the leverage used, the free margin, and basically all the information that is also available through MetaTrader concerning the account. Also the account name and the account number, of course. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, then we have 2 types of live data that you can subscribe to. One is tick data, which uses the subscribe symbols function. And then we have bar data, which uses the subscribe symbols bar data function. And then we have also the option to get historic data, which uses the get historic data function. And these are the 3 data types that you can request from MetaTrader. The live data will always be sent to the Python side every time there's a change in the data. For example, every time there's a new bar. The historic data function will already be executed once, and then it will receive the answer every time you request it.
And by Python here, we're simply implying that in this implementation that we're demonstrating, it'll be Python. If you're using C# or Java, or if you've built your own implementation in C++ or any other language, then that is where this data will land.
We can, for example, try out the subscription function. This one will subscribe to EURUSD and the cable. And you can already see that the ticks are coming in here. And also the MetaTrader side said that successfully subscribed to EURUSD. It also says that there's an order sent, because I actually have an order command here, but we'll go through that later. So I just closed the order.
And what kind of latency do users experience with the data request? So from the moment that real-time data is subscribed to from a client application, in this case the trading strategy, to the moment they receive the data itself, the prices. Now that we've removed ZeroMQ from the picture, what sort of latency improvement have we observed with using files instead of sockets?
I mean, basically, since it is using a bit less, the CPU demand is a bit lower, This means that we can check prices more regularly. For example, the default value would be to check the prices every 25 milliseconds. This, of course, means that the maximum latency would be 25 milliseconds. But you also have to know that MT4 is actually only checking the prices like every 50 or 100 milliseconds, depending on the broker setup. So, an additional 25 milliseconds is not too much if you consider this. If you really need strategies that can't cope with a few milliseconds delay, then you probably should look into our fix API package once it is published.
Yes, that's a very good point. So for people who have very low latency or their strategies are very latency or price sensitive, this connector is not the ideal solution. As Roman just mentioned, we also have a fix API connector that we're due to publish soon, which I believe is in Python and Java, if I'm not mistaken,
yes.
Roman?
Yes.
So that will be released soon as well, and we'll also record a demonstration of that. That'll enable you to see how, if you have a slightly more latency sensitive trading strategy or application, then you're better off using Fix directly as opposed to using this project, whereby you still have MetaTrader as the intermediary before your order actually gets to market.
So with this subscribe symbols function, it will always set the symbol list as given here. So if you, for example, want to stop subscribing to the pound, then you would just send the new list, which does not include the pound. So now it's stopped sending tick data for the cable.
And if you're using this in real time without if for some reason you're not able to or don't want to close your application and restart your instance, there are functions in place for you to do that during the execution of an existing script without having to worry about having to terminate your script and go back and do things from scratch. The
second function is to subscribe to bar data. One interesting thing here is that it will actually also open charts for the bar data. I will probably have to close all other charts so that we can demonstrate this. The background behind this is that in MetaTrader, if you request bar data from a symbol that is not the chart symbol and not the chart time frame, for example, here we have a EURUSD daily chart, but if you now want to have data for example, the M1 bar data of Aussie Cat, then there's no guarantee that this bar data will always be directly updated on when there's a new minute, because these are processes which are run in the background. If the chart is not open, if the chart is open, then it forces MT4 to refresh the data as quickly as possible, and therefore we implemented it in a way that you can set the MT4 EA to open the specific charts. We can demonstrate
That's pretty handy, because that way people also get a visual as to how that particular market is at the moment. So it has a few benefits, not just in terms of the data being up to date if the chart is open and quoting, but also from a convenience perspective, that people get a visual as to the data that's been open, the data that's being retrieved, so that if they are using the platform at that time, they can see what data they're subscribed to, and also get a visual as to how that market's going.
Yeah, and as you can see, I already executed this command, and it opened the 3 charts that are needed. And you will now see the on bar data function triggered every time there's a new bar data, which of course will be in the next minute. So it's a bit, we'd have to wait a long time to see the M5, M15 to update.
How about we go into historical data now? So we've done implementations of, we've done a demonstration of real-time bar tick and what am I missing? Bar tick and?
Real-time is just bar and tick data. And MT4 also only offers these type, and historic data is then bar data. So let's try to get historic bar data. For that, you need an enter and start and end time. This is just using the current time, and the start time is then 30 days before the current time. In this case, we want daily data, or we could change to 4-hour data, for example. And if we execute this, it will show that 122 bars have been read. And you can also see that the EURUSD H4 chart was opened. In case you want to, again, request new data, then MT4 would be forced to have this data available.
That's very handy. Awesome.
That's basically the data side of the API. And then we can go into actually opening trades or managing trades.
Yeah, let's go into order and position management now. So this, we've covered real-time and historical data acquisition. So now let's tread into order management. Okay,
for this, I added this paragraph to the onTick function because, for example, if you want to open a buy position, you need to know the ask price, or else it would probably result in an error. And it will only execute this once. So if we do this, we should open a small EURUSD position. There it is.
Just a quick question on this note. So the ZeroMQ version of this connector back then did not require stipulating a price if a market order needs to be executed. Is that the same? Is that case the same now with DWX Connect? Do you need to specify an ask price when you're simply executing a market order?
I could actually just try it without the price and see if I have implemented it. Yes, it is.
There we go, live debugging and success.
Yeah, I actually forgot that I implemented it. So forget this. You can also just call this anywhere else because you don't need the price. When the order was opened, it also wrote a message that there is a new order open with all the information like magic, which was given as 1, 2, 3. If you can also just don't use any magic, then it will be used the 0 as magic number. If you only have one magic number, then you don't really need to specify it. And yeah, it will also show the commission and the profit loss in case you have a strategy which closes, for example, after a given loss or something. You can also use this information. And
if a user wants to set a stop loss or take profit further down the line, this initial market order has been set up without a stop and take profit, but there will always be logic where people set stops and take profits immediately after the execution of the trade. So is it possible now to do a little demonstration of how to modify the stop loss and take profit of an existing order if we have that order's information?
I mean, first, it is also possible to submit the order with stop loss and take profit. I just didn't use these, but you can see.
Oh, perfect.
That there you can also set a comment or an expiration date if it's a pending order, like a limit order. So you can directly set it. But in our example, we will demonstrate how the modify order function works, which just needs the ticket, and then you can, for example, specify the stop loss. In this case, we use the open price minus 0.01, and the terminal and execute it. And you can see now it has a stop loss, which is 100 pips.
Perfect. On that note, the stop loss requires a price submission, not a pips submission.
Yes, it's price. Yeah. I thought it's more consistent with how MetaTrader works, because there you also have to submit the price. And the tick value could also be a bit different. For example, if you're trading like indices or something like that, then it's not always clear what the tick value actually is.
Yeah, you're right. That's right. That's a significant improvement on the ZeroMQ version of the connector that was, in hindsight, primarily built for an FX and CFDs audience with a focus on currencies at the time. Most of the beta testing was done on currencies and a limited universe of indices at the time, but this makes the whole project universal. So you're now not restricted by a points convention. You can, depending on whether you're using MetaTrader 4 or 5, use the same connector for any symbol that's provided to you through the platforms.
Okay, so next, we can demonstrate the close functions. There are actually multiple ways to close an order. You can either use the ticket, or you can close by symbol. This would close all orders of the symbol, or you can close by magic number, which would close all orders of the magic number, or you can just execute the close all orders, which would then close all open orders.
So the advantage users have is that if you're maintaining lots and lots of positions, or you have lots of orders open, there is a very convenient nuclear button in the connector that enables you to close all positions.
Actually, I always wondered why MetaTrader doesn't have this, and like where you can manually.
I know it's like the most common sense feature to have, but they don't have it in MetaTrader for some reason. You can close orders manually one by one, but not close them all in one go. I have no idea why. It will make total sense for them to have it. And if they're listening, please add that functionality. We've got it here in the connector, but it'd be super cool for people to be able to do that manually as well.
Yeah. So to test the close order function, I set the maximum lot size to a higher value, because you can also close partially, and I want to demonstrate this. So I would allow a maximum order lot size of 1 lot, for example, on the MQL side, and then I submit an order of 0.5 lots. And now, we can execute the close order function with, for example, 0.1 lot, and then it should just close the 0.1. And you can see now the size changed to 0.4. So you can also partially close if you have a large position, for example, and you want to have different take profit targets. You can close part of the position with this function.
Perfect. So in summary, position management is totally possible through the connector as well. And there are actually benefits to using the connector versus doing that manually, as it requires just one step with one instruction through the connector, as opposed to 2 or 3 modal dialogues in MetaTrader for you to do the same position size change.
Sure, and we can just close the complete order, for example, by any of these 3 functions. I will just use the close all order command, and now everything is closed. You can also access the historic trade information with the get historic trades command. So I would execute self DWX get historic trades, and the only parameter is lookback days, which is the number of days to check to show the orders. Maybe you should only put it to 1, because we had a lot of orders. And you also have to make sure, if you have a long history that you want to check, you would have to set the account history in MetaTrader to all history, because else it will not be available. And it will then give back all trades in the given lookback period. Here we just have 1 day, because we opened so many trades today that it would be a lot already. If you want to check a longer period, like 90 days, you would have to make sure that you set the account history and MQL to all history, because otherwise the MQL part will only be able to see the trades that are actually shown in this tab. So you have to check all history, then you should be able to get the complete list. If we execute this now, it will trigger the on historic data function, and here we just on historic trades function, and here we just print how many trades we had, because it would be too much information. So here we actually have 215 trades, because I also ran some performance tests before we started the screencast. So Yeah.
What kind of data structure is historic trades? Is it a data frame? Is it something else?
It is stored in files like this, in JSON format. And I think the data structure is pretty much it. So you have the ticket of the trade is the key, and then you have the whole information. It is done this way because first, if you have like pandas and data frames, it can be less performance. It can slow down a bit the execution. Yep. And I also wanted to have it consistent with the open orders, because it would be strange if the open orders are different than the historic trades.
That makes sense, yes. People will have flexibility on what to do then with that, and they can read it directly into the applications and do what they'd like with it, since it's a standard format. It's JSON there, it's JSON here. Let's talk about the screen that's been showing up so far in this conversation, the input parameters of the actual expert advisor that you're going to need to deploy on the platform. For those of you who don't have much experience or no experience with MetaTrader, be that 4 or 5, input parameters is essentially values that an algorithmic trading solution, such as an expert advisor or perhaps an indicator, what have you, require prior to being launched. These defaults are already set for you in the MQL version of the API. And depending on your requirements, you'll need to make a very small adjustments to these input parameters. We've got a separate video already on our YouTube channel that demonstrates how to load and modify these values. In most cases, you'll probably just need to modify maximum lot size. And if you're trading symbols that have a different convention of points, for instance, or lot sizing, then you may need to modify lot size digits as well. Also, the maximum orders field is important, since the default value for safety's sake is set to 1. So while you're testing the project, your script doesn't accidentally launch too many orders, but you can modify this value to suit what is typical behavior on the part of your strategy. So go for it, Roman. Just thought I'd add that bit in for people who are listening.
Yes, as you said, usually you just have to modify these 2 values, because all others can be set to default. Lot size digits only matters, for example, if you trade indices, where you have to, for example, if you only can trade complete contracts and not like 0.01 contracts. And then the millisecond timer, if you want to have a less delay, you can set it maybe to 5 milliseconds. Of course, if you set it too low, like, I don't know, once in 1 millisecond, it could be more CPU expensive. So then the num last messages is just an internal value that is used to determine how many of the last messages MQL should store in the message file. The message file is not really that important, because it's just for communication and debugging. But even if you skip a message, it won't be really that important for the trading. The value is set to 50 because it could theoretically happen that you get like 10 messages in MQL, and before the next check is done on the other side in our example Python. But it's this value is not too important, but I wouldn't reduce it to less than 50. These 2 values just determine whether new bars should be open if you subscribe to bar data. I would suggest to keep these at true, because as we explained, it will force MT4 to load the data. But if you don't want to open the charts, you can set it to false as well. And that's it.
That's quite a few improvements you've made there. Congratulations. The ZeroMQ project was started by myself, not having too many resources at the time, and just coming up with something to essentially empower people who were trading or creating algorithmic trading solutions in different programming languages to MQL. And the vision was really to provide an API in the absence of an API. But you've taken it a few steps further now. You've sanitized the code a lot. You've improved the functionality. You've also successfully removed the ZeroMQ dependency, whereby we actually now have a much faster implementation in any programming language. So congratulations, well done. I'm really pleased that you were able to take this and run with it like you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually think that from coding perspective, the ZeroMQ thing is maybe, you could say it's a bit cleaner if you have the socket communication, but sometimes an easier solution or a simpler solution is still preferable if you. I mean, it depends on the goal, but from my experience, it is easier the way it is done now.
Yeah, I agree. And also, going back to the point of multiple programming languages, well, we've done efforts on our side. Well, Roman has done efforts on his side to provide 3 implementations in C#, Java, and Python. There is no dependency as such. You don't have to use these implementations as long as you're using the core part, which you can't work with the connector without, which is the MQL-EA, that depending on your platform version, MT4, MT5, depending on your account type at Darwinex, you'll need to use. But regardless of MetaTrader version, you can implement the interface yourself in a programming language of your choice. You needn't have to use any one of these 3 programming languages. However, if you are going to use C#, Java, or Python, the code base that we've provided gives you a very good start. So you can kickstart your development efforts, modify the existing implementation a little bit to suit your purposes, or just build on it to build something a lot more robust than the examples that we've provided. So in all cases, we've tried to be of as much help as we possibly can in building it in 3 of the most popular languages that are used in algorithmic trading. But like I said, there is no need for you to use this code. You can write your own implementation code in whatever programming language you choose. So I think that pretty much covers what we wanted to talk about today. So hopefully for anybody who's listening, you still have the option to use the DWX ZeroMQ Connector to act as your API interface to Darwinex. Darwinex does not yet have a native trading API, but we do now support the TWS API. So if you're looking to trade cash stocks or futures, you can, of course, avail the TWS platform and any other TWS API supported platform, such as NinjaTrader or the multi-charts environment, etc. But if you're primarily trading FX and CFDs, or if you would like to trade through MetaTrader, but do it algorithmically with a bit more flexibility that may or may not be available to you in MQL, you can now use the DWX Connect package to completely bypass ZeroMQ, have a much faster, much cleaner implementation of your API to Darwinex, and also benefit from having the platform itself, MetaTrader, giving you oversight as to what your strategy is doing at Darwinex and the ability to manually intervene if that becomes necessary at any point. Plus have visual charting tools for you to, if that is part of your process, to essentially analyze in real time or visualize how your positions are performing. Were you to have a use case for any kind of intervention, then the DWX Connect package gives you the best of both worlds, whereby it gives you an API for you to trade at Darwinex algorithmically, and it also gives you the platform for you to manage your positions and activity in general. So with that, I think we can call it a day, Roman. What do you reckon?
Sure. I think we covered everything important. Of course, if people have suggestions or also issues, they can then write and they can open issues on GitHub, and I'll hope to hopefully be able to help them and include any requests for new functionalities and something like that.
Fantastic. And for those of you wondering when this will be released, we will be releasing it soon, open sourcing it soon on GitHub. If you are a user at Darwinex, you will receive an email in your inbox on a Friday weekly email or in another announcement during the week. But to get notified, you can essentially sign up at Darwinex for a user account. It's free. There's no cost or any other detail required, whereby you can receive email correspondence from Darwinex. So if you don't already have a Darwinex account, head over to Darwinex.com and hit the sign up button at the top to create your user account. If you already have an account at Darwinex, then kindly ensure that you are subscribed to receive emails at Darwinex. And the easiest way to check this is to just go search in your inbox for Darwinex or from info@darwinex.com if you're using Gmail to see any past correspondence, and just quickly check in the bottom of that any one email you find a link called Update Subscription Preferences or Update Your Preferences, and there you'll be able to visualize whether you are subscribed to receive correspondence from Darwinex or not. And the moment we release it on GitHub, we will send that email out to all people subscribed to the lists, and everybody will get notified. The other thing to do also, just so you're in tune with any updates and notifications to do with this project or any other project we're doing with other members of the team, such as Martin Tinsley, for example, are to subscribe to the Darwinex YouTube channel, and please set all notifications rather than just subscribing to personalized notifications. This will notify you immediately anytime anything new is launched, either on GitHub, via YouTube, or on YouTube itself as a video or a podcast. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your time, Roman, in conducting this mammoth effort to make this project a lot better. And in doing so, you've added a lot more very useful functionality. So kudos for the effort, and look forward to speaking to you again in the next episode, where we'll be going into a bit more detail as to practical applications of the DWX Connect package. We'll go through some example trading strategies that we created at the time of DWX ZeroMQ Connector's release. And we'll also talk a bit about the development efforts that we've done our end on the Fix API side for people who may not find DWX Connect suitable for the kind of trading strategy that they are running. Or if they wish to completely avoid MetaTrader altogether, then we have a solution for that too. So stay tuned, and thanks a lot for your time, Roman.
Thanks too. Looking forward to it.
Cheers. Have a nice one. Take care.
You too. Bye.